with your veggie scraps? Make some vegetable stock. So I save all my ends from my onions and my celery and my carrots, and I wash them before I freeze them, and I just freeze them and let them build up till I get enough to fill my big pot. I fill it with water, and it's just gonna simmer, and it's gonna make the most delicious veggie stock. We're gonna heat it up. We're gonna get it warm. And I also need to add some spices to it first. So I'm gonna go out to the herb garden and get some thyme and some fresh parsley. And we'll be back. We need a half a cup of parsley and 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme. So today we are going to pressure can our vegetable stock that we made yesterday. I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to add some spices. Who wants to learn? Video coming up with full instructions. Okay, so first of all, we are going to warm up our vegetable stock that was in the fridge overnight. And then I went out to the garden and I picked some fresh herbs. And what we need is a few bay leaves. It depends on really how much you like. I'm gonna put in 1, 2, 3, about 3 bay leaves. I'm going to put in about 10 to 20 peppercorns. I am going to put in a tablespoon of salt. I need 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme. And I think this amount will be about a teaspoon. I'm short. And I'm just gonna add all of them together. And then I need a half a cup of chopped parsley. And I am going to include the stems. And I'm just gonna roughly cut them. That helps get the flavor going. And I would say, yep, that's perfect. That's about a half a cup. We're gonna put that in. We are going to let this broth come up to a temperature. Okay, now that we've added our spices, we're gonna let the spices get some flavor in there. The salt. And those spices to season this really nice. It smells so good right now. And of course, we will do a taste test and see if we need to add anything else to it. We'll be back. Okay, so I'm gonna get my pressure canner ready. My pressure canner, which is a Presto, requires 3 quarts of water in the bottom. Follow your instructions for your pressure canner. Of water. And our stock is nice and warm. Who's ready for a taste test? This is gonna be so good, trust me. And I'm sure once you make it like I have, you won't buy stock anymore. You'll make your own stocks. Oh, yeah, that's really good. I think I might actually add some more salt. Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more salt. Okay, taste test number 2. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So now what I have to do is I have to get the fresh herbs out of the stock. So I'm going to put it through a strainer, and then we're going to fill our jars. should actually bring this closer because knowing me, I will just make a huge mess. I always make huge messes. Okay, so let's get out all of the herbs. And it's also a good way to skim or strain. It's a good way to strain your vegetable broth again. One last time before you can it. So I'm going to continue to do this, and I'll come back when I'm ready to fill my jars. Okay, I didn't get to do it all just because this pot isn't as big as my other pot. So we'll start with this, and we will start filling our jars. And you want to fill these up to, I think it's a 1/2 inch space. I'll double check that before I'll have to double check that, but I think it's a 1/2 inch. Look at the color of this vegetable stock. There are just so many uses for vegetable stock, isn't there? And you can use it for so many things. So I am going to fill these all up, and then we will get our fresh lids on and our bands and get them in a pressure canner. And I'll be back. Okay, we are all filled up, and I did confirm with chicken stock pressure canning, it is 1 inch headspace. You're going to wipe your rim really well. You have to make sure that there's nothing on there or you're not going to get a good seal. You're going to put your lid on and your ring finger tight. And ready? Going in your canner. Check that out. I am doing these in quarts. Clean your top really good. Make sure there's nothing on there. Lid, ring, finger tight, in it goes. And I'll be back. Okay, so my canner allows for 7 quarts and it's full. So now let's put the lid on. Okay, so what we do first is we inspect our pot, we inspect our lid, make sure everything's okay and working properly. We're going to put our heat on high. We are going to wait as the pressure builds. The steam is going to start to come out of the vent pipe, and then we'll be back. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so your basic vegetable stock recipe is only 2 pounds of yellow onions, 1 pound of carrots, and 1 pound of celery, 24 cups of water. That's it. You throw it in a pot, you let it cook for about, you bring it to a boil, let it cook for about 1.5 hours, turn it down, add your spices. And then your spices are 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves, 2 bay leaves, 10 to 20 peppercorns, and 1 tablespoon of salt. And that's it. You let it cook for another 45 minutes. Then you wanna strain it, strain out all those spices. You don't want them in there. Now, you can stop at that point. You do not have to can this. You can put it in some containers and put it in the freezer. You can put some in the fridge as long as you use it from like 7 to 10 days. And then if you don't use it within that time frame, throw it in your freezer. You always have vegetable stock, and it's so much better for you than getting it in the grocery store. It's homemade, it's fresh, you know what's in there, and it's really good for you. Okay, so right now we are waiting for this to start steaming out of the vent pipe. Once it starts steaming, it needs to come out of that, this is for my pressure canner. It needs to come out for 10 minutes, and we'll set the timer when it starts venting. And the kitchen's a disaster. I'm gonna go clean up. So let me tell you, the first time I pressure canned carrots, and I read so many instructions, watched so many videos, read all the instructions to my pressure canner because it was my first time doing it. I read so many instructions, my brain hurt. And then by the time I was done with that, I was so relieved that, first of all, that I did it. And why was I so afraid? Go ahead and pressure can. You can do it. I know it looks intimidating, it sounds intimidating, but once you've done it once, you're good to go. See some of the steam there? I'm not sure if it's quite showing up. Can you see that steam coming out of the vent pipe? Now I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a really good amount of steam coming out of the vent pipe. Can you see that? And then the air vent lock is in the up position. So we are almost up to pressure. As soon as my timer goes off for the 10 minutes, then we're going to put the pressure regulator on. Now I'm putting the pressure regulator on. Now I have to wait for that to start to wobble. Once that starts to wobble, that's when we set our timer for the processing time. And I will come back to show you what the wobble is. So, how are you feeling? I'm feeling pretty confident. Not so bad, is it? Why is it so intimidating? I do not understand. But you know, learning those old-fashioned, old ways to do things is just really a lot of fun for me. And I'm really enjoying it. I hope that you try it too one day. You know what's gonna happen the first time that you can. Even if you don't pressure can. If you can, I think what did I do first? I think I did applesauce first. Oh my goodness. Applesauce time, when it's apple season, I'm exhausted from applesauce. But it is so good. Canning your own items, doing things the old ways, making your own food. It's just so much fun. I hope that you come along. This is Linda with Homestead by the Lake. I hope to see you again. Thanks. Okay, see that? That's the wobble. That means that there is the correct amount of pressure inside the canner. And when it wobbles, it lets just a smidgen out to keep the pressure at the correct amount, because you don't want the pressure getting higher than what it's supposed to be inside the can. So now that that is wobbling, now I can set my timer for 25 minutes because I'm doing quart jars. And we'll be back. My timer just went off. So the only thing you do right now is you turn your stove off. Do not touch anything. You have to let it sit. You have to wait for it to calm down. You have to wait for the lock to unlock. It has to cool off before you can open the lid. So we'll be back. The lid lock just went down. So now I can safely remove the pressure regulator. And see, there's nothing coming out of there. Now I can remove the lid. First one out, look at it, it's beautiful. So now you're going to hear all the lids pop. And if for any reason your lid does not pop, then just put it in the fridge and use it within the next 10 days. As long as your lids pop, you put it on your shelf and it's good for a couple years. You always want to remove your band and make sure and test it and make sure that it is properly sealed. And you don't want to store it with the bands on, because if for some reason the seal comes loose, you need to know that. And you don't want to store it with your band on, because if it does come loose, you won't know. And you don't want to eat something that has gone bad or has gotten air inside. Look at that. See how easy that was? We were so intimidated, but look, we did it. 8 quarts of vegetable stock for the storage shelf. Let them sit for 24 hours undisturbed before you store them. And don't forget to remove the rings before you store them.